somebody across their pathway that they'll listen to, that they'll hear. Because see, I might cross their pathway, and even though with my experiences, I may have experienced some of the same thing that they've experienced, they may not hear me. They may hear me. But at the same time, they may not hear me. But there's somebody out there that they will hear, and that they will adhere to the words that they're speaking, and begin a cycle that would change their lives. But we got to get it out there to them. If you don't take it to them, many times they don't get it,
Okay, Pastor, end us for today. You got about 5 minutes. And I was watching your face as Pastor Walker expressed some of these ideas. And not only do you agree with them, but you seem to say to me, push it a little further.
Yeah,
I think you got books and all of those things that push it a little further.
Yeah, I have one, that's up under my belt. I got it locked in, and that is Pastor Kelvin L. Walker. I remember 24 years ago, I had 3 years that I had been delivered. And all the time, people would compromise when they're out there talking about God. They'll talk about everything else, but they wouldn't talk about God. And I kept watching this brother for those first 3 years, that he didn't compromise. Everywhere he went, he made known of God. Me being a brother that was from the streets, see, I wasn't completely free in my mindset. I had stopped using drugs for 3 years, but I still wanted to use drugs every day for the 3 years that I was free. I still wanted to use. So I kept just watching this brother. He just kept speaking about God anywhere he would be. He would acknowledge God. And what I liked about that is that the word does say that. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. But I like verse 6 when he says, in all of your ways,
yes, sir,
acknowledge him. And then he would do that. And I just came to him one time, and I said one day, I said, man, I said, look, I said, I'd like to be able to just connect with you, man. I said, because you have a sense of just, you got a love for God. He accepted me. He knew from my past that I was still doing certain things, which I was still selling drugs at that time. But after talking with him from time to time and the humble way that he presented what he had to share with me from what I talked to him about, he never told me, he said, man, you got to stop selling those drugs. What he recognized is that I had just got hooked up with God, and I'm allowing God to help me help myself. And so for 5 years, I wanted to snort heroin until one day I was sitting on the side of the road on 16th and Joe Johnson with a small Bible and a dictionary. And I heard the power of the voice speak to me and said, look up the word junkie. Because I used to hear in the streets, once a junkie, always a junkie. Now here I am, I'm free for 3 years, but that mindset that I heard in the streets is still lingering. And I want some heroin anyway. I've been off of it, for 3 years, but I was on it for 20 years. And I said to myself, I said, well, I haven't had any drugs in 5 years at that time because I'd moved on up. But God was my witness. He knew I wanted to take that hit. I opened up that dictionary and looked in there, and it said, junkie, slang, a narcotic addict. Well, I felt like it summed it all up. It's a narcotic addict, so it didn't mean any drug. But I knew that that couldn't be the case with that drug that was controlling me. I had tried marijuana, I had tried cocaine, pills, and all those things, but it was nothing like that heroin that controlled me. And so it said ESP. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I found out that it meant especially, and it says one using heroin. And at that time, I didn't want heroin no more after I heard, he said, I didn't make you to be no junk. See, when I found out that information, it had to do with God working through somebody. And this is the man that God worked through, that I was inspired by watching him speak about God. And suddenly I ended up becoming a minister in 1998, because the strange thing about that is that now I got to go deal with my peers out in the streets and things, knowing good and well that I didn't talk about God when I was in the street. I didn't know him. I didn't pretend like I knew God. And see, that's one thing that God don't want us to do, or he didn't want me to do, is pretend like I knew him. But he wanted me to come and get to know him, and that's what I did. And so after I stopped running, I came into the ministry in 98, and I've been taking the message everywhere I go. I don't compromise. I reason with people, and I have to do that because God had compassion upon me. And when you have compassion upon the people, you have a love for the people who are out there still hurting. And that's why I take it to the streets and anywhere I go, because I used to take drugs anywhere I went. If I went to the penitentiary to visit my friends back when I was in the streets, I went in the penitentiary with drugs. And I would do drugs in the penitentiary. If I'm going to court facing a charge, I would go to court with drugs. I'm talking about the controlled substance that was controlling my life made me take drugs everywhere I went, because being a supplier, I always had drugs. So it was strange to become free. And that's why I'm so thankful today to let people know that it wasn't easy for me.
Last statement, Pastor Walker. 30 seconds.
I would say to people, man, if God has touched your life, then and shows you and special love towards you, then you're obligated by God's love touching your life to share that love with other people. Otherwise, man, what's the point in God touching your life if you're not going to take what God has shared with you and share with other people so that they too can come out of that darkness into the light as well as you have? In other words, you can't put your light up under a bowl, man. You got to set it up on the hill and let that thing shine, man. If you have other people an opportunity to come into this relationship that we have come into as well. Can't just sit back and say, well, I go to church, man. That ain't good enough. You got to take the church that you are outside and into the communities and share church.
Okay, well, let me thank the two of you for bringing that excellent information, Pastor Walker, and so that we might be able to know more about Waller, know more about what is going on. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning. might have to get something straight to hold it up.
So, Doc, how you doing?
Hey, I'm trying to get through the third show we have.
Oh, okay. You actually had more time than you.
Oh, I tell you,
Yeah.
Yeah, it won't work.
it won't work.
Yeah. Well, if you could hold it, would it matter? And just refer to it from time to
Get a
time.
mic check from you.
Big part?
Mic check. Just count to 10.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.